All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and start working on the low poly tutorial. So I just want to walk you through if you've chosen that option. So I am in Photoshop to begin with, and that's one thing to notice first is begin in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and open the file that was downloaded out of the Schoology page. There was a Google Drive folder. There were forms in Schoology, and you had a lot of options on what you chose to download. For the low poly tutorial, I want you to download this option, the option 4 document right here. We'll let that open and load. So go ahead and open that up, and then we'll just open it directly into Photoshop so you can get started. Now, once you are in Photoshop, let me turn off my timeline. That's from a different class. So I'm in Photoshop, obviously, and now I can go ahead and I can start developing my image. So, the key to a good low poly to begin with, or really any project, is you've got a good starting image. So this has been cropped. It's been fiddled with a little bit. I want my layers panel, obviously. There we go. Just put that right there. We'll open it back up. Okay, so I got my layers panel. Now what I want to do first before I start doing the low poly is I want to edit this photo in a way that I think is going to really pronounce the 3D features of the face, so the highlights and the shadows. And some of that work has been done already. I also want to make sure I have really rich colors to draw from. So I'm going to go ahead and put a brand new layer over top of this. So I'm going to go up top. I'm going to do layer. I like to do it this way, new fill layer, and I do a solid color, or you could do a gradient. That's up to you. I'll show you both ways. Solid color, I can hit OK, and then I can choose a color. Let's say I do this pale blue color. You might want to do something more magenta, whatever works. I'll do that, sure. That is bright. Now that's a really bright color, but what I'm going to do then is over my layers panel, I've got my blending mode is set to normal with 100% opacity. I want to change that. So I want to go ahead and I want to put this on screen, and I want to drop my opacity significantly. So now it's more of just sort of like a sort of fuchsia haze over top of everything. So I can turn it off and I can see what happens. It kind of like actually lightens things and gives a little bit of nuance and changes my color tone. It just gives it a different feel. So again, if we're trying to convey something true about yourself, the color of the overall image is really going to matter. So think about how you might want to do that. I could also then double click in here and I can change my color. So maybe I want to try that paler blue, or I want to see what it looks like as a green, or sort of a warm golden yellow. So you can kind of decide what works for you. I'm going with this kind of cool blue color. Find a color that works for you, apply it over top. Once you are done doing that, we're going to go ahead and start planning out where we are going to make our low poly. So I'm going to make a new layer that's really important. This is going to be my line layer. I can name it lines or whatever. And I've got my layer going. Now, once I have that, I'm going to use my brush tool. And my brush tool is going to be what I use to then paint my polys in. Now, with your brush, again, you can make sure with your size that it's not too big. I might do like a 5-point brush so that they are noticeable, but not so thick that they make things difficult to see. And you can choose what type of brush you want to use. I'm using a hard rod pressure. I really don't care which one you use, but probably not with a soft edge. So something with a hard edge. So my hardness is up to 100% with a more defined edge right there. Once we're in here on my line, I can zoom in and I can start navigating around the face and doing the polys. Now, the thing with polys is they are triangles, right? So when I talk about triangles, actually I went down to a 4. You need to think, where does there need to be a triangle? And I want you to pay attention to a couple things. I'm just going to go in and I can start by making a triangle. And it can be wonky. I'm doing this with the mouse, so it's pretty wonky, but at least this is just a guide. This is going to help me know later when I'm in Illustrator where my triangles need to go. Now, a couple things with your triangle. Whenever I'm drawing a triangle, I want to make sure that when I draw it, everything inside of it is similarly colored. I never want to go across. I'm going to Command Z. I would never want to do a triangle like this because I've got a dark area where his facial hair is and this light area where his sort of palish skin tone right here is. If I were to fill this with a color, it's gonna either, because it's all gonna be one color inside. So that would either obliterate the skin color and it would all be this facial hair color, which would be weird. Then you'd have facial hair going up into the cheek. Or if I chose this pale peachy color, it would obliterate the facial hair and it would look like there's a big chunk missing of it. So I need to be really mindful of the fact that when I'm drawing my polys, they need to only kind of stay within the realm of a certain color. So I'm gonna do a poly here. That's all basically the same color inside. Now up here is a different color. I also want to make sure I'm actually doing triangles. So I'm going, that's all about the same color in there. Same thing, like if I did this sort of white, that's all the same color. Then I can come over here, that's all sort of white. You can do a low poly there. Now, not every detail needs to be kept. If I wonder about how to do this black, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I can do some just sort of really wide, skinny polys, which can be a little tricky. But then when I get here, this is all about the same tone. Great. This is all about the same tone. And that one. When you're in a small area like the eye, you're going to need a lot of small polygons. When you're in an area like the cheek, you might have larger polygons. That all looks, I don't love that one. These all look about the same tone right in there, but then you have this little dark polygon. So I need to make sure that I'm prepping for that, right? So I'm going in and I'm just creating polygons that are going to, again, triangles is another way to put it, that are going to sort of follow the tones of the eye, the colors that I'm seeing. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do that all over the face. The other thing you might want to think about is, what sort of color or sort of shapes, color, that's not the same word as shapes. What kind of shapes, yeah, that's what I meant to say, are you trying to make this thing have? Are you trying to do it with big shapes? Are you trying to make a pattern with the shapes? Some people like to do kind of rows. Some people like it to be more random with a mix of big shapes and small shapes. And that's really up to you deciding what your style is. That's a four-sided shape. That did not work. There we go. So I'm going to go in and just keep sort of making these shapes wherever I feel like colors are consistent. And that's the big word, I think, is consistent. I can go in there and I can do some stuff. And now I'm getting this weird convergence point. That's okay, but I don't have to keep it. So I might want to break it sometime because everything all sort of converges from one spot. That might look kind of weird. Or maybe you want that because maybe you want it to look like, like a bullseye, like your person is starting to crack apart because something hit them right there. I don't know. So you're going to get these convergence points and you kind of have to decide what you want to do with that. So I'm in and I'm starting to put this all together and starting to kind of gauge where I need my shapes. So I'm gonna stop right there and fast forward a little bit and do some more lines and then we'll pick back up.